It's a weird maze. The children have been trapped in it for 3 years and have never found a way out because the maze changes shape every day and every month. A new person is sent up. When Jack opened his eyes, he saw a group of people surrounding him with smiles on their faces. Jack's memory is very confused. He could only run out of instinct. As Jack was desperately trying to escape, he suddenly tripped over a small blade of grass and fell to the ground. When he looked up, he was surrounded by a 100-meter high wall. Jack was completely stunned. Martin is the leader of this place. He told Jack that everyone here was brought here by an elevator, and Martin was one of the first to come here. He's been here for at least 3 years, living a primitive life. Every month, the elevator brings supplies and a boy, and this month's boy was Jack. Jack had a lot of questions, but Martin couldn't make any sense of it. Jack looked around the room and was curious about the stone door in the center. He asked Martin what was behind the wall, but Martin didn't answer his question. He just told Jack that there were 3 rules. Do what you have to do. No killing each other. No going behind doors. It wasn't long before Jack spotted 2 boys running out of the maze. Poulter, beside him, told him there were walkers. Only walkers are allowed in and out of the maze. This made Jack even more curious about the stone door. As he slowly approaches the gate, he is suddenly pushed to the ground by one of the boys. Jack was instantly enraged and was about to hit him. But at that moment, there was a terrifying sound behind him. Everyone's face was so serious that they were careful about breathing. Then the wind blew in the passageway. The labyrinth slowly closed, but before he could regain his senses, something strange happened again. While he was gathering fertilizer in the grove, Jerry the Walker appeared before him. He gave Jack a death stare. Then he started attacking Jack like a madman. In the nick of time, Jack picked up a bone and knocked Jerry down. Then he got up and ran for the woods, but he didn't get very far before he was tackled again. Luckily, with the help of his companions, he was able to contain Jerry, but that wasn't all. When they lifted Jerry's shirt, they found a wound made by the monster. They exchanged glances. Then they took Jerry to the entrance of the maze. They grabbed their poles and drove Jerry right into the maze before the door closed. These strange events left Jack in a deep state of confusion as to who had sent him here. What secrets are hidden inside the maze? Unfortunately, Jack had lost his memory, except for the name he heard in his dream. He couldn't recall anything. The next morning, Jack saw 2 more of his companions enter the labyrinth, but no one said anything about it. They just stood at the door, praying that they would come back alive. Time passed, but they didn't come out. Just as the door was about to close, John arrived, dragging a wounded Martin with him. Martin was incapacitated. Jack saw that the situation was critical. If he didn't do something, both of them would die. So he had the courage to break into the maze. They saw that Martin was unconscious, so they tied a cane around him and hung him in the air. This would at least keep him safe. However, the appearance of a monster made the 2 men lose their heads. John rushed to run for his life. Jack quickly hid in the corner of a tree. He waited until the creature was gone, then came out and secured the cane. After settling Martin, Jack planned to join John, but within a few steps, slime suddenly appeared on the soles of his feet. It turns out there's a monster lurking above his head. Jack scurried through the maze, but he ran straight into a dead end. Jack had to follow the canes to the top of the maze, but after a few steps, there was no way back. At the critical moment, Jack leaped and grabbed the cane to distance himself from the monster. But the next moment, the monster came from behind. Both of them slid to the ground at the same time. Luckily, the monster was caught in the cane. Jack survived. John also arrived at that moment, and the maze is slowly closing. The 2 of them made it to the exit as fast as they could. They could have gotten out of the maze, but Jack stopped dead in his tracks. He deliberately waited for a while. The monster was finally lured by Jack and was killed by the stone door. The 2 of them dragged Martin out of the maze. It was the first time in 3 years that they had defeated a monster. Jack earned the respect of his friends, except for the agent who had been targeting him. He thought he'd made peace with the monster for 3 years. Now Jack has broken that rule. The agent is worried about the monster's revenge. He planned to punish Jack, but just then, the sound of an elevator rising came from outside the door. This time, it was a girl who came up, holding a note in her hand. It said she was the last one, and as soon as the girl opened her eyes, she called out Jack's name. Then she fainted. Jack was full of doubts. In order to unravel the truth of the matter, he took his friends back to the maze and found the monster. They dismantled the monster's body as a precaution and found something inside the monster. John tore open the outer skin, but inside was an electronic device. This means that someone is controlling the monster. With this clue, Jack proposed to go deeper into the maze, so that we can find out the secret behind the maze. John agreed. Then he took Jack to his secret base. It turned out that the terrain of the maze had already been modeled by John. After years of research, John knew that every area of the maze would open regularly. The only area that never opens is Area 7. And last night's monster came from Zone 7. Jack looked at the numbers on the battery and seemed to have a plan. The girl also woke up at this time. She seemed to be frightened. She hid alone in the tower and kept throwing stones at the ground. It was only when Jack appeared that she calmed down. The girl's name was Annie, but she didn't know why she remembered Jack's name either. She didn't know why she was here, and she took out 2 vials of serum from her body. Jack thought it might be the antidote, so he injected Martin with the serum. Martin woke up and remembered everything he remembered before entering the maze. It turns out this is a lab. There's no way they can get out of here, and Jack was working with the people behind it. He couldn't figure out why Jack was here. Maybe Sector 7 is the key to solving the mystery. Early the next morning, when the doors to the maze opened, Jack and John rushed in. After passing through several zones, they came to the most dangerous one, the blade battery. At that moment, the battery suddenly made a strange sound, as if it was showing them the way. Following the sound, they made their way to the end of the maze. They thought it was just another dead end, but when Jack activated the battery, the door behind them suddenly opened. Inside was a circular opening, but before the 2 of them could figure out what was going on, there was a flash of electricity. Then an alarm went off. It's time for the maze to close again. The blades are closing at random. Time is running out. They can only race against death in the blade formation. Luckily, they were quick and escaped safely from the blades. But just when they were out of danger, the stones on the ground rose up. The labyrinth is disintegrating like a landslide. In a moment of panic, John found an exit. At this point, they have no choice. They had no choice but to fight to the death. After escaping, the 2 of them felt more confident. They agreed that the entrance to the cave was the exit of the labyrinth. But as night fell, something unexpected happened. The labyrinth was out of order. Countless monsters came out. The open space became a slaughterhouse for the monsters. One by one, the companions were killed. Even Burton was almost killed, but we all worked together to cut off the monster's limbs. Burton was spared, but Martin was not so lucky. In his last moments, he pleaded with Jack to get out of the maze. When the monsters cleared, the agent looked at the wreckage of his home and punched Jack in the face. He said he was to blame for all this. Jack felt guilty too. He grabbed the limb from Bolton's hand and stabbed himself in the thigh. At the same time, memories appeared in Jack's mind. It turns out that Jack and Annie were both in charge of observing the maze. After learning the truth, the agent planned to sacrifice the 2 to the monster. At the critical moment, John and his men succeeded in rescuing them. The group was divided into 2 camps. One side believed that Jack could lead us out of the maze and decided to go with him to find a way out. The other side followed Gary and continued to live here. Jack and his friends started their escape. Soon, they arrived at the most dangerous area, Area 7. As expected, monsters were waiting for them, but they didn't back down. They charged up with their sticks and fought with the monsters. With the concerted efforts of everyone, the monster was soon pushed off the cliff. But when they looked back, the battle had just begun. Countless monsters were slowly approaching them. Jack and the others fended off the monsters' attacks. Annie was responsible for activating the exit of the maze. But after a long time, they realized that the hole is the door lock. But they needed to enter an 8-digit code. Jack suddenly thought, could it be the order of opening the 8 areas of the maze? Before he could say anything, a monster fell from the sky and crushed John. He was the only one who knew the order of the maze. At this critical moment, Jeff risked his life. Jeff risked his life to save John, but the monster's attack continued. They were cornered, and there was no way back. At the critical moment, Annie cooperated with John to enter the code. The opening was activated. The monsters were crushed by the descending stone door. They finally escaped, but things didn't seem to be that simple. They walked through a narrow corridor and came to a laboratory, but there were only corpses on the floor, not any living souls. Jack pressed a button on the console. A message from the doctor appeared on the screen, letting them know the truth. It turns out that the world outside has long been scorched by the sun. Even the few who survived are suffering from a disease called flicker. This virus attacks people's brains and turns the infected into zombies. In their new generation, a few of them have the ability to resist the virus, but they must be in a special environment to activate their brains for research. That's the reason for locking them up in the maze. But before the sound of flowers fell, a group of men in black broke into the lab. The doctor had no choice but to kill himself. Jack realized his importance and planned to save the world with his partners. But just then, the agent suddenly appeared. He had been stung by the monster and became delirious. And holding a pistol, he threatened to kill Jack. Just as he shot, John quickly threw out the wooden stake in his hand and knocked Gary to the ground. But tragedy struck. Poulter was unfortunately shot. In the end, he didn't make it out alive. The rest of the group was taken to a helicopter by a group of soldiers. They finally left the labyrinth. But this cruel experiment was far from over. Everything they saw was just a trick played by the doctor. There are even more horrible experiments waiting for them. The movie is not about anti-utopia and fictionalizing an apocalyptic society that depresses human nature, but rather focuses on portraying the inner struggles of the teenagers and their journey of escape in a totally enclosed world.